To begin with, what are the definitions of homosexuality? Numerous people classify themselves as, and are classified by others as being homosexual. This can also involve other terms such as gay, lesbian, and transgender. Which attributes, which circumstances, which criteria are used to determine homosexuality? When people classify themselves as being homosexual, is it then considered to always be factual? What are the parameters of homosexuality? Specific psychological characteristics, specific physiological characteristics, specific behavior, specific perceptions, preferences, desires. Besides aspects involving sexuality, which other qualities generally differentiate homosexuals from heterosexuals? Are there general differences in intellectual, cognitive, and certain learning abilities? Are there general differences involving their senses, personalities, perceptions? What are the effects of homosexuality in the evolution of the human species? With more knowledge and understanding, the way people perceive themselves could vary dramatically. One's self-esteem, quality of life, and understanding of reality could change significantly. Also, the perceptions numerous heterosexuals have of homosexuals could change dramatically. Accordingly, it would be very significant to have adequate and accurate knowledge of what constitutes the parameters of homosexuality within society. Consider the following hypothetical examples. A. If homosexuals comprise 10% of the general population, were statistically more talented or gifted than the general heterosexual population, statistically contributed more desirable attributes for the better of society, were not exhibiting undesirable traits or behavior disproportionately. If this were the case, homosexuality could be generally perceived as being favorable. It could be considered as a desirable trait that some heterosexuals would envy. Numerous homosexuals would understandably be proud of their attributes and generally enjoy a high level of self-esteem. B. If homosexuals comprised 1% of the general population, were statistically less talented or gifted than the general heterosexual population, statistically contributed less desirable attributes for the better of society, were disproportionately exhibiting undesirable traits or behavior. If this were the case, homosexuality could be generally perceived as being unfavorable. It could be considered as an undesirable trait that many heterosexuals would disdain. Numerous homosexuals would understandably be discontented having such attributes and could generally have a lower self-esteem. Adequate and accurate knowledge of what constitutes homosexuality could facilitate having most people placing such parameters in the proper perspective. This could achieve a true understanding as well as more cohesiveness and a more hospitable coexistence for many.
It is inaccurate and unfair to compare this to certain infamous civil rights issues involving the treatment of some African Americans/black people. Many have been unjustifiably accused of being racist, as more and more are now unjustifiably accused of being homophobic. First off, it is something the vast majority of humans share. The vast majority of those that have existed, currently exist, and will soon exist consider certain homosexual activities revolting. It is normal, natural, logical, and healthy for most heterosexuals to consider themselves engaging in sexual activity with another person of their gender to be revolting. This is not to imply that most would consider homosexuals revolting if a sexual relationship is not involved with themselves. Whatever the case, homosexuals are part of human existence and are entitled to be treated fairly. However, promoting homosexuality as being on par with heterosexuality is erroneous. Statistically speaking, in most ways homosexuals are the same as heterosexuals, but in some ways they are significantly different. Depending on one's perspective and perception, certain traits attributed to homosexuality can either be more favorable or less favorable than certain traits attributed to the general heterosexual population. It is further complicated by conflicting religious, ideological, social, and personal beliefs. Although it is a noble thought to have a society that is all-inclusive and respects most differences, it can be impractical, contradictory, and counterproductive. This especially in a pluralistic society with numerous religious, ideological, and cultural differences. With all the human variances that constitute small percentages, minorities, pluralities, and majorities, all cannot be accommodated equally. Certain values, preferences, and visions for an optimum society should be taken into consideration. Sometimes groups perceived as being treated unfairly are accommodated, while others in similar predicaments are ignored. Sometimes it depends on popularity, politics, legal representation, media coverage, trends, or which groups are considered to be expendable. Sometimes minorities and majorities excel at the expense of others, sometimes at the expense of all. Discrimination is a word with different meaning, from the very positive to the very negative, mixed, and all in between. If certain religious beliefs were accurate, all secular ideologies, cultures, practices, and laws would be totally insignificant. However, with so many conflicting beliefs and assertions, it would not be practical to base a pluralistic society on a particular religious belief or lack of belief in religions. However, some type of basis that is indigenous to the region could achieve more stability and less conflict. Rationale for acceptance of homosexual marriage include not restricting certain people from civil rights enjoyed by the majority, the freedom to love the people you choose, the assertion that two people getting married because they love each other does not adversely affect society, not being judgmental of people with a different lifestyle, freedom for consenting adults in their private lives, freedom of expression, tolerance, and not being unreasonably judgmental. Anti-sodomy laws are antiquated, unjust, and irrational. Marriage doesn't have to include children. But taking the foregoing into consideration, is it justifiable to deny marriage or even a sexual relationship to certain related consenting adults? This referring to cases not involving offspring. Should adult relationships considered to be incestuous continue to be illegal? In light of the explanations as to why it is wrong to deny homosexuals the right of marriage, do they also apply to those engaged in interfamily relationships? Or what if the interfamily relationship was homosexual, as with two sisters? Some people would consider such marriages as an affront and devaluation of marriage. Some would consider such marriages to be immoral. Many enthusiastically support same-gender marriage, but staunchly oppose same-family marriage. Yet same-family marriages can have qualities that are inherently more natural than those of same-gender marriages. What are the intelligent, logical, and ethical rationales for accepting same-gender marriages but not same-family marriages, legally? This is an example of inconsistencies that can come about when changing certain laws to accommodate particular groups of people. At times, the ramifications can be more widespread than initially expected. Many people that reportedly support same-gender marriages are coerced or shamed into expressing such support. Likewise, some people that support same-family marriage wisely do not express their true feelings. What about all the statements regarding freedom of expression, tolerance, all-inclusiveness, equal rights, fair treatment?
Traditionally, the primary reasons for both religious and secular marriages have been recognition and support of the family unit. Procreativity was encouraged, especially when population growth was perceived as being beneficial to the society. Certain benefits, including lower taxes, have been part of the consideration given to support the families. For many, the main image of traditional marriage is a lovely young couple, a man and his virgin bride, in a wonderful relationship, starting a new life together and planning to have children. Great significance, pride, and euphoria have been associated with such images of marriage. Getting separated or divorced would be considered highly unlikely. Many share those views, including regions where marriages are arranged by others. Certain realities, especially with widespread images contrary to their traditional images, can take away from their expectations and enjoyment of marriage. These can include regions that are considered to be overpopulated, and having children can be somewhat undesirable. Being aware of a high percentage of separations and divorces, a significant percentage of children being born outside of marriage, a significant percentage of couples cohabitating without being married, people in their 70s, 80s, 90s getting married just for tax purposes, people getting married that either can't or don't wish to have children, people of the same gender getting married. For some, these diminish the sanctity of marriage as they viewed it. It can be similar to that of joining a club, earning a diploma, or receiving special recognition. then the prerequisites, qualifications, and standards change, diminishing the value, significance, and prestige. Aside from the traditional reasons, there are other practical reasons for getting married. These include certain civil benefits, rights, and privileges. Some of the rights are important for people living together, even if not in a love relationship. In some locations, these can be addressed by civil unions. Has traditional marriage been basically wrong? Are there significant social issues that warrant changes to marriage? Are the changes to traditional marriage having unintended negative effects on societies? Is it time to totally reevaluate the parameters of marriage? Exceptions to the concept of traditional marriage have been ongoing, but the recent strides and proliferations of same-gender marriage have focused more attention on the institutions of marriage. Are certain aspects of traditional marriage outdated, no longer valid, less relevant, no longer practical, rarely practiced or expected? Should there be different types of marriages? Secular, non-secular, spiritual, accommodation, temporary, permanent, without children, open, financial. Sometimes it is not appropriate to simply revise laws or traditions. Sometimes when laws or traditions are perceived as being flawed, it's better to review the concept and maybe replace it. Altering some aspects can result in unintended realities with other aspects. Sometimes a balance, meaning, application, compatibility, or other aspect can end or become disproportionate. It can continue to be flawed, but in different ways. Also, making certain changes in the laws may not be as simple as it may appear. There could be much more complexity involved, along with the necessity to change even more laws, requirements, customs, perceptions, etc. There are other ramifications that may need to be addressed. They may be considered from inconsequential to very significant and either have a direct or indirect effect. On an obscure note, consider adultery. Laws against adultery, as well as some perceptions, were influenced by situations in which adulterous relationships produced offsprings. Even when contraceptives are employed, numerous pregnancies still occur. The effects on some of the children and sometimes for society were very significant. However, that possibility would not exist in some of the same-gender marriages. If two men were married, and one of them had an adulterous relationship with another man, the possibility of an offspring would not exist. Because of the wider publicity with same-gender marriages, should the perception of adultery in such situations change? Should concepts, word meanings, and perceptions change? Statistically, how do traditional marriages, same-gender marriages, and cohabitation affect societies? As the situation is evolving, some are happily enjoying benefits that were previously denied to them. Some are very unhappy, feeling the traditional image of marriage is being destroyed. And some are not personally affected in a significant way.
Additionally, many people say that homosexuals should be treated the same as heterosexuals. In some cases, this is logical and accurate. However, as in numerous situations involving race, gender, etc., adhering to such conclusions in a general manner can be both illogical and inaccurate. In numerous situations, people prefer to have their differences acknowledged and respected. Many are proud of their differences and prefer to be treated accordingly. There are many obvious differences between heterosexual couples and homosexual couples, and heterosexuals have often been considered homophobic for being against such overt homosexual relationships. Yet, some of their feelings are very logical and justifiable. It is normal for many heterosexuals to be repulsed by the sight of two homosexuals being affectionate with each other, such as kissing. But do an equal percentage of the general homosexual population feel repulsed when seeing a heterosexual couple being affectionate? Of course, what people have been accustomed to seeing can influence how they perceive the different couples. Still, it is very normal for some heterosexuals to be repulsed by even the mention of homosexual activity. Is it fair to categorize them as being homophobic because of their natural, normal sexual perception? Many people feel that out of equity, more same-gender affection, including kissing, should be included in advertising, television programming, and news segments, etc. Yet, such behavior is naturally revolting to a lot of people. How are judgments made as to what is appropriate, conscientious, and rational? How are different people affected in different ways, and how many? What are some of the effects on society, including future generations? Some people have changed their perceptions of same-gender couples and homosexuals being allowed to adopt children. After getting to know them and or being enlightened, they conclude that homosexuals are the same as heterosexuals. However, often that was based on their wrong perceptions to begin with. Some were expecting the homosexuals to be unreasonably different in many aspects of their lives. Consider this example. Many think of hardcore criminals serving life sentences in a penitentiary as being far from normal. Some think of them as being animals. But if these same people were to go to a penitentiary and interview some of the inmates, they could be very surprised. Many of the inmates are actually normal in most ways. Those interviewing the inmates could later respond by making statements such as, "He seemed just like a normal person. He actually had a good sense of humor. He said he loves and misses his family. He didn't threaten me." After the interview, he stood up and walked away upright on 2 feet. Having distorted, exaggerated, and inaccurate perceptions of others is common. It can often be attributed to prejudice, bias, inadequate knowledge, and unreasonable expectations. After becoming aware of their shortcomings, many exaggerate the positive qualities of those they previously disdained, sometimes to the degree they appear oblivious to other qualities. Depending on one's perspective and available information, the same person could be perceived as being very positive or very negative. Some people can be unjustly stigmatized, while others can be undeservedly acclaimed. To a large degree, people's private inner thoughts, desires, objectives, feelings, motivations, reasoning, perceptions, and past behavior are not readily apparent. Most people that are not classified as being psychotic, eccentric, having a medical or psychological condition or impairment, etc., are perceived as being normal to most others, and most of their significant covert differences may not be relevant. Both heterosexuals and homosexuals are basically the same in regard to most aspects of life. However, there are distinct, significant differences. Some of these differences are not always apparent.
There are differing opinions regarding homosexuals being allowed to adopt children. Children could be brought up better in a good household with homosexual parents than in an undesirable household with heterosexual parents. And in some cases, certain aspects could be more advantageous than that generally expected of most heterosexual households. As with many aspects of life, there are aberrations. Also, if children are having issues regarding their perceived homosexuality or conflicting gender identification, having homosexual parents could be very helpful, but it could also exacerbate the situation. Some homosexual children have not openly expressed their homosexuality. Some have had conflicts, attempted to suppress their homosexuality, and have feared rejection. Certain children congeal their sexual identity in accordance with their upbringing. Accordingly, for certain children, the sexuality of their parents influences their sexual identity when it has not already been solidified. Some children adopted into homosexual households are subjected to unnatural situations that are not generally preferable. For better or worse, there are differences in how the children turn out. Some of the differences are in their perceptions, concepts, values, self-evaluation, and how they may be treated by others. The effects of such manipulations can continue into generations. Subjecting some children to such unnatural pairings could be considered a violation of their basic human rights. This is not implying there can't be certain benefits to heterosexual children having homosexual parents, but overall, it can be an unnatural pairing that is not considered to be the preferred option. The optimum, normal, and most preferred parenting involves both a mother and a father. A mother can't provide all the characteristics of a father, and neither can a father fully compensate for the absence of a mother. Both maternal and paternal contributions have generally been integral aspects of human upbringing. How children turn out can have far-reaching effects on societies and beyond. The ways in which the children are affected and the effects on society are far more important than political correctness or the wishes of the prospective adopting parents. Some parameters are constantly changing, some only appear to change, some rarely change, and some remain constant. Religious beliefs, ideological belief, enlightenment, customs, practices, opinions, conclusions, power structure, laws, justifications, interpretations, appeasement, objective consequences. Were some wrong in the past but right now? Right in the past but wrong now? Wrong in the past and wrong now. Partially right / wrong then and now.
Right in the past and right now.